We've just been joined by the country's Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Alhaji Timothy Musa Kabba. The minister is here to talk about Sierra Leone's diplomatic relationship, sort of thing we were discussing just now with the U.S. ambassador, the new U.S. entry restrictions on Sierra Leone by His Excellency Donald Trump 2.0, among other things this morning. Good morning, Mr. Minister. It's a pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen in the studio in Sierra Leone.
I mean, you are a huge figure when it comes to diplomatic negotiations, and all of these sort of things for Sierra Leone. As the #1 man when it comes to international cooperation in Sierra Leone, what do you make of this?
A disclaimer, I'm not the #1 man. The chief diplomat as per the Constitution is the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone. As minister, I'm more like an envoy of the President on foreign policy issues. Thank you for having me in the studio.
Indeed. So as an envoy, what do you make of this? I know you're not speaking for the President, but just as a professional.
Well, I'm speaking on behalf of the President and the people of this country, relating to the temporary suspension of certain categories of the United States visa, and Sierra Leone being named as one of the 7 countries that have been proclaimed to have been suspended, for the issuance of visas in those categories. It's not so pleasant news, for not least for the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but for all the citizens of our country. We have Sierra Leoneans who have gotten admission into universities in the United States that are going to be affected by this suspension. And there are business people who also have businesses or probably have businesses in Sierra Leone who have to fly in and out of the United States to run their businesses. They have been affected. There are those who have also decided, as part of their annual plan, had decided that they will visit the United States for vacation and other purposes, who will not be able to do so. So it's not a pleasant news, and it's one that we're compelled to engage in to ensure that we take a turn on this particular decision that has been made legally.
What will you be doing?
Well, the reasons for the suspension are quite clear. One, historically, it's been noted that Sierra Leone has not been receiving identified deportees with documents bearing, the Republic of Sierra Leone, for example, passport holders, so people who have a Sierra Leonean passport that have overstayed, and also a mention is made of overstaying, like I said. And so what we're going to do, and like we've been engaging with the United States, the ambassador was just here a few moments ago. In these past 2 years, we've been very much cooperative because we believe it's the right thing to do. Anybody who bears our passport is assumed is Sierra Leonean because that document it's an indication and a guarantee of our citizenship. And so we've been actually accepting deportees coming to Sierra Leone, cooperating because it's just the right thing to do. And for the categories of visa that's been suspended, you'll see that the onus is actually on the citizens of our country. Our citizens obtain these visas, they go and they overstay, and there's very little we can do as government because the application process itself is a private application process, a contract between the citizens and the consular section of the United States Embassy. And it's an unfortunate situation. But also going back a little further into history, after the civil conflict and during the civil conflict, there was an exodus of Sierra Leoneans into the West, notably the United States of America. And these Sierra Leoneans benefited from the American version of asylum, which is the TPS, the temporary protection status, and many of those folks did not actually transition into becoming legal people in the United States. And so when there's an intensified crackdown on these illegal and undocumented aliens, and this is what we get a mass deportation. And President Donald Trump has a no tolerance for illegal and undocumented aliens living in the United States. And it happens that we do have quite a lot of people who traveled during the war on Sierra Leonean passport, whether they are naturally Sierra Leoneans or they exploited the opportunities that abounded during the war. This is all affecting us.
So where's your factor? Do you think that's happening?
It is
using our passport.
Well, there are quite a lot of people who we've seen. I think about a few years ago, 2 folks were deported to Sierra Leone. When they came, they could not sort of assimilate into our society. They posed quite a lot of security threats to our country because they were just not Sierra Leoneans, but they were found. They were found with Sierra Leonean documents which trace their origin to our country. So these things happen.
Sierra Leone has suffered some negative publicity, so to speak, in instances when some of these Sierra Leonean passport holders are actually non-Sierra Leoneans, but when they commit crimes, obviously because of the documents they're holding, it's that country, Sierra Leone, that takes responsibility. That being a problem, that being understood by Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, what measures have we put in place as a country to, especially at the Immigrations Department, to ensure that non-Sierra Leoneans don't come and get access to a Sierra Leonean passport and use that to fly out of the country and then misrepresent Sierra Leone, which would then take the fall for their ill actions?
That's correct, and I think what genuine applicants, the consequences of this suspension and the impact on genuine applicants is a function of the abuse of the visa privilege that is given to our citizens who go and overstay. On the aspect of the passport, I think there are flaws here and there, and this has been the case, but I think it's our responsibility as government, as people, to keep the integrity of that particular department. Our passport should be the most sacred document Sierra Leoneans should use to travel, must have to travel. And so if we compromise the issuance of that document, and if we give those documents to the wrong people, the consequences will be what we're facing today. And I think I join you and the many Sierra Leoneans who are calling for stricter measures, for measures to protect and promote the integrity of our passports.
So you've answered to this in theory, but I'm asking now in practical. What have been the measures put in place to address this problem? Because this is not new information coming to the ministry or to Sierra Leone, that we've had instances when non-Sierra Leoneans are passport holders, are Sierra Leonean passport holders. So it's not a new problem. It's been there for years. What are the practical solutions put in place to address this problem?
That's what I'm saying. I don't work in the Department of Immigration. My role in passport, and I want this for the, for the benefit of the public, is service passport and diplomatic passport. What we do in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, when we get the recommendation or the application from the MDA, in the case of service passport, in case of diplomatic passport, that's the prerogative of the President. The President, through the Secretary to the President, will inform the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that this citizen or person is deserving of a diplomatic passport. Therefore, His Excellency has, within the powers of the President, recommended this person for obtaining this particular category of passport. We will now forward the instruction of the President to the Chief Immigration Officer who issues this diplomatic passport under the instruction and directive of the President. With service passport, it comes from MDAs, people who meet certain qualification in the civil service. They are deserving of the service passport. And when it comes to the ministry, we refer to the department. General passport production is exclusively the responsibility of the authorities in the Department of Immigration. But it is our business as a government, it is our business as citizens to ensure that we keep the integrity of this. Let me give you an instance. A few months ago, I was at the airport. Unfortunately, somebody handed a parcel to me and came to me, Mr. Minister, you're going to Abuja, can you take this passport, with a note verbal that this actually came from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but these people are going to Latin America. 10 passport, ordinary passport. I said, okay, open, I will do it. I mean, if there's no contraband, why not? We opened, I saw this passport, I saw the original document for the so-called conference, the note verbal. As Minister of Foreign Affairs, At Sport, I knew the note verbal was a counterfeit. And then I dug into it further. I realized, in fact, this is human trafficking. What they do, they use people in our High Commission in Nigeria, they transport this stuff and they give a cover note to the embassy in Nigeria to issue visa to these folks. So what I did, I drew the attention of the police. So we all have a role to play, and those passports were confiscated because it's human trafficking.
So the role that everyone has to play, the expectation is there is some level of collaboration amongst MDAs for the greater good.
I agree.
Foreign affairs comes in very handy or very situated in the conversation when there are misperformances of Sierra Leonean passport holders in other countries that leads to, in such instances, some soft diplomatic issues here and there. So you are connected in this, but there's an expectation that there's collaboration between your ministry and other MDAs. So asking you about measures being put in place was not in the absence of the knowledge that your ministry, while it does not directly work at the immigration, there should be some collaboration as Foreign Affairs with other MDAs as to let's sit on the table. This has become a diplomatic embarrassment to Sierra Leone. We even have drugs-related scandals. You wonder how much investigation is being done to ascertain all those people with drugs-related scandals of recent times, their Sierra Leonean passports, if they are really Sierra Leoneans or other nationals holding onto Sierra Leonean passports. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs cannot be disconnected from the conversation, even if it's ordinary passports.
Your journey of this explanation is quite understood, and I think it's laborious. I did not exonerate the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from what is happening. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs works in concert with all other departments that are related to the issuance of our international document. I stated it. I spoke about diplomatic passport and service passport. Ordinary passport are obtained by ordinary citizens right at the department. Service and diplomatic passport go through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the Immigration Department. So we work. We are working in concert. So I want that clarification to
there
go
was
home.
A time,
now I'm coming.
As you've clarified that, there was a time I recall there was information circulating on social media about an Asian-looking fellow holding a Sierra Leonean diplomatic passport. Could you speak to that? Has that ever been a situation in Sierra Leone where foreign nationals hold on to a diplomatic passport?
I beg your pardon. Look, I am foreign minister. I'm not going to be discriminatory or racial here. Yes, an Indian-looking person could have a Sierra Leonean diplomatic passport. Why? It's a prerogative of the president in the first place. But also, there are certain categories of people that can hold our diplomatic passport, for example, which is legal. A consul can apply for Sierra Leonean diplomatic passport because it is accepted by the established laws of diplomatic engagement that you can give your passport to a consul, for example, because they represent the president in that country and they must have a legal document to the effect to show that the country is satisfied and that they are an envoy of His Excellency the President. So the racial thing, I think it's just not in place. Other nationals can have. For example, a native Sierra Leonean can go to another country and obtain a passport when they meet the metal for obtaining the passport. So yes, there is a misuse. There are people who are holding our diplomatic and service passport, our ordinary passport, that are not deserving of those passports. But there is that rule. There are the rules of engagement in how citizens, for example, can naturalize, and through naturalization, they can get our citizenship and get our passport.
Your ministry, Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, is not entirely innocent.
Absolutely. It's complicit to effectively what is happening
today. It's not entirely innocent to some of these issues that we've dealt with. Take, for example, government officials now going through an interview at the U.S. Embassy. And part of that, in a very diplomatic way, the U.S. ambassador just nicely put it that some people who should not have had some of those visas or their names and passports slotted in some of these trips were unfortunately slotted in some of these trips. There have been allegations about some workers at your ministry who facilitate putting names of people on lists to travel because they get paid in dollars, thousands of dollars for this. So your ministry itself isn't entirely innocent. Some of the workers in your ministry have helped to contribute to the embarrassment that now Sierra Leone faces. But as the head of that ministry, what have you done understanding these allegations and some of these activities that go on? How are you cleaning your house?
Thank you very much. Indeed, it's always been the case. In fact, some people contact me and say, Mr. Minister, please, program day. I said, what is program? Because it has been a deja vu. It's been, people come and say, there are programs in your ministry. But I tell you what, there have been staff of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs netted in police custody. I have had, on several instances, had to arrest my own folks, pass them through a ministry's administrative processes, and hand them over to the police. I give you an instance. A certain former member of parliament, bearer of a diplomatic passport, went to Guinea-Conakry, forged a note verbal of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, put the names of people on that list to go to the Russian Federation. But diplomatic languages are just conventional. I think when the embassy of the Russian Federation in Conakry realized that there was a flaw with the language, what did they do? They referred to us. I took the document and conveyed to the police. These things happen. They happen. When we get rid of them, when we get hold of them, we hand them over to the police. And I'm telling you, today is Monday. I haven't been to the office, right? We are going to institute further investigation to ensure that we take care of this thing because it's causing embarrassment. It's absolutely causing embarrassment. We must keep the integrity of the consular section intact. Of course it's flawed. Of course it's Sierra Leoneans. Of course it's people. They take advantage of it. Like the US ambassador said, some people, when they find their names on this list, they call them for interview because they are doing their job, right? They know who is a government officer and who is not a government officer. Let me give you another instance. There's a matter I'm investigating in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice. This is with regards to the International Bar Association that had their annual meeting in the UK. Somebody brought a list, they call them State Council. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Department of Consular, said they were dealing with this representative of the Ministry of the Attorney General's office. Something happened in the mix. And then the British picked it up and they brought it because none of the persons on the list is actually a state council. The Attorney General and I, we are working very hard to establish the fact of that matter and for action to be taken. These things happen. The broader picture, we are ministers, we oversee the affairs of the ministry, but those little departments, they embarrass us. And for example, we have ministries, departments, and agencies that will send you lists of delegates to attend international conferences. If you do a little work, just dig into it, you find out that some of those folks are not even members of the civil service or the public service.
But some of those MDAs as well have complained that the process between them as institutions sending a list to your ministry, which is the ministry that sends the list to the embassies, that duration from what they send to your ministry and what your ministry finally sends to the embassies, there's a lot of, they distort it. They change names on the list, they take out some and put in some. And that process up until this March 2025 for the UN, for the CSW happened as well.
Okay,
let me speak to 2025, it's still happening.
Now let me speak
How
to
many of your workers have been sacked, suspended, or investigated?
So this is about they say, we say, all right? Rumor going out in Sierra Leone today is that the Minister of Foreign Affairs politically expunges names from the CSW. It's not true. I'm not a villain. Yeah? Last year, 258 names were submitted to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for processing of visa for the CSW. Only less than 30 people got the visa. This year, I spoke to the MDAs that are related to CSW that we will not send over 100 applications to the US Embassy. Guess what? In March this year, a certain ministry, the permanent secretary, sent passports to us for CSW and what have you. And this passport actually landed on my table because it was addressed to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. By way of internal document, the parcel came to my office. I opened the envelope. I found 3 ordinary passports. But the memo says that these people are senior directors in this ministry. And I called the permanent secretary. You cannot have senior directors in your ministry who do not have service passport. What can you say about this? And he started babbling. And then I realized there was a problem. With this CSW, like Fabian is saying, the names that were presented to the United States Embassy, the final note verbal that went to the US Embassy came through me, right? And I have an arrangement. I told my folks, when you're sending this list, I must have a final copy because I will send backdoor to the US ambassador so he verifies with his consular section. This is not happened in isolation. I will tell you, it is on both ends. Both people work in the consular section in my ministry and in the other agencies and elsewhere in other institutions. The problem is, right, it has become a culture that people always want to exploit these international conferences to leave the country. When this year's CSW came, we had a meeting with the United States, President Trump's government, that CSW is a donor-driven program and that it's not a high-level UN program, that they will not issue visas to non-relevant persons. Over 100 names were sent to the US Embassy. Less than 15 visas were issued. I had to intervene for those who were deservingly going to attend beneficial programs in the CSW. But you know what? When I started cracking down, they say, oh, this man, they pull a name because it's a deja vu. It's what they do. But I tell you what, we will continue to keep the integrity of that particular department to ensure that Sierra Leoneans, because I tell you, the Foreign Affairs is, Minister of Foreign Affairs is, Minister of Foreign Affairs consular section is only for government officials, MDAs. Ordinary citizens should apply through the normal US Embassy website and go for their interviews and get their visas. So people want to exploit the fine relations between our two countries where visas are given to their own benefit. Yes, it is true. I have been accosted by people saying, Mr. Minister, you wicked, you pull name them per list. I say, I don't deal with the list. What I do is to keep the integrity of the list. And people also come and say, Mr. Minister, program then are your ministry. I say, program? You think that's a programmatic ministry? No, it is not.
But Mr. Minister, wouldn't you agree that until and unless these people are sacked or driven from these MDAs, the problem will not solve?
Who've been doing it? My predecessors have been doing it.
Your ministry?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Who've been sending people to the place. People have been fired. People have been removed. And this has happened. We're going to institute investigation. But the reasons for this is quite clear. Overstaying and the historical failure to accept our citizens. That is the crux. And this decision is independent of our existing relations with the United States. We have a fine bilateral relationship, excluding this suspension. There are 192 countries in the world for the sake of our bilateral relations. We deal with them, and so this is United States is very important. It's going to affect our citizens. We'll try to remedy the situation. So when there's a review, 90 days from since this proclamation was made, that we will come away, will come out from this particular zone of suspension. Let's all work together. Our people are in the United States overstaying on these visas. Let's encourage them to be law-abiding, to come in good time so that they don't overstay in the United States and we don't get this sort of effect that is affecting even the righteous, the deserving ones that want to go to the United States.
You know, you've just said it yourself. There's a 90-day period which has been set aside against which this particular, proclamation could be reviewed. What do we do then? I mean, tangibly, so.
So look, they identified Sierra Leoneans for deportation. I have made it a priority. Anytime the ICE of the United States identifies someone as holding documentation from Sierra Leone, I instruct the embassy in Washington to get those people sent to Sierra Leone, because they identified with Sierra Leone because they are holding Sierra Leonean documents.
How many of them are we talking about?
Well, we have had a good number of people being sent to Sierra Leone since the President Donald Trump came to office. I'll be cooperating. And so that's one of the reasons our cooperation. The ambassador would have told you that every day we discuss that, because there's a mass, crackdown on undocumented alien in the United States. Every day I get requests. IC is calling the embassy, can you intervene? I'll call the embassy and give them instructions. If you prove them beyond all reasonable doubt that they are holding Sierra Leonean document, they went to the United States on Sierra Leonean document, let them be sent back to Sierra Leone.
The ambassador said, I mean, there is another way around this. And for those who are living there already in the U.S., they could readjust their statuses, to becoming legitimate, citizens of the U.S. Do you support that philosophy?
Well, those who are there, and
already,
if they can regularize their stay, if the United States, that is the host country, can regularize their stay legally, it's fine and good.
Since you came in, how many? I'm asking, I want to know the number, total statistics of illegal people you've been dealing with from the U.S., the inflow from the U.S. to Sierra Leone.
Not illegal people, undocumented Sierra Leoneans in the United States having illegal stay in the United States. Good number, I don't have a count, but there is not an instance since I became Minister of Foreign Affairs where we have turned down the ICE or the United States from, turned down a citizen that has been identified by our embassy in collaboration with the ICE.
The U.S. ambassador didn't seem to know when we asked him this question, the category of passports that mostly overstay in the U.S. Do you have any data for that?
Well, the State Department has all the data. I mean, okay. like I said, this goes beyond my term, it goes beyond this administration, it goes beyond the administration before this administration, because it's historical, yeah? And so he may not readily have the statistics, but the State Department has the statistics, and it's clear. There's a figure. 15% of these categories overstay this amount, so they spoke about business, student, tourist, visitors, so the problem is there, and the statistics is quite clear.
Are you investigating an alleged human trafficking by some members of parliament, just as you've done for the justice sector?
I cannot investigate members of parliament for child trafficking. That does not fall under my purview. And I am aware, I was copied, it was brought to my notice by the British High Commission, this matter in question, that there is a suspected child trafficking by some members of parliament. And it was also brought to the attention of the Speaker of the House of Parliament. The Speaker and I have engaged, and they are conducting investigation. I am the conduit, the diplomatic conduit, and I feel dismayed by that. I believe in the leadership of the Speaker that they will dig into it to help the British government to investigate that, and so that we hold those that are responsible accountable for that. Because it's all of these that cumulatively lead to this sort of embarrassment that we get as a country.
We've seen instances where the Chief Minister himself has, openly affirmed that he himself puts names of people, for these international trips. How do you deal with these instances when public officials feel the need to insert names on the list for these trips?
I would say with certainty that the Chief Minister will not put people on the list to go to the United States to overstay or to run away. These may be people that are relevant to the overseas trip. Let me give you an instance. If you're discussing peace and security in the United Nations Security Council or disarmament, right? You can actually take somebody that is not a government officer, that is related or that could give testimony to the UN Security Council or the panel that is concerned, Yes, it is legal. You obtain visa for them and you bring them back just the way you took them.
Let's look at how we as a country treat our own country seriously. We've seen the US issuing, visa bans here and there, restrictions. But we as well in Sierra Leone have non-Sierra Leoneans, whether it's from the US, the UK, whichever part of the world, who come and stay in Sierra Leone. What are our own protocols?
So, for example, we have visa on arrival. People get visa on arrival. Those who are working in this country obtain work permits and they get temporary stay in the country. And I guess just like every other nation, when they overstay or they are illegally residing in our country, the authorities that are concerned with the state security, because when people overstay, like stated in the United States press, it poses national security threat. For example, where we cater for the public, for a public of 1,000 people, and you have undocumented aliens, populating that area, and you have 500 more of those that are not Sierra Leoneans that are illegally settling in that area for whom the government has not catered for in the budget. It causes hardship, and that hardship culminates into insecurity. So yes, I think immigration does reading, and Ministry of Labor, they check with industries, they check on people that are not well documented, and there are ways and means, just like every other functional country, where these undocumented aliens are identified and repatriated to their countries of origin.
Do we have the needed apparatus in country to keep track of such people who are illegally in the country, people who have overstayed, and this includes everyone and anyone? Do we have the apparatus to keep track of that data, to collect and keep track?
Yes, we are a functional state. I'm very aware of instances where, for example, the QNet issue, and there have been, I think, last year or a few months ago, I can't remember exactly when, I had the ambassador of Zimbabwe resident in Ghana visiting Sierra Leone. For Zimbabwean citizens that were living in sort of captivity in one of the provincial headquarter towns, they were brought into Sierra Leone illegally to do internet scamming. What happened when we got the news? We conveyed it to the ONS and to the police. They went, they raided, and they got those illegal folks that were brought in for criminal activities back to their countries. Yes, the intelligence services, the police, they have the capability and the capacity to actually crack down, identify undocumented as foreign nationals living in our country and repatriating them to their countries.
For other people across the world who require a visa to enter Sierra Leone, what's our visa criteria?
Well, there are different categories of visa. Our embassies sometimes turn down people, just like every other embassy would turn down someone if they don't feel they meet the metal or they deserve the visa they're applying for.
I asked because is there a requirement for background check for these people?
I would suppose.
For security reasons?
I would suppose, yes.
I am asking because you wonder, how did someone like Jos Lijekers, who is obviously not in the category of people who would enter Sierra Leone visa-free, he would require a visa to get to Sierra Leone. You would wonder, how did someone like Jos Lijekers, whose name at the click of a research on a computer would raise red flags, how did such an individual make it into Sierra Leone? And this is just one of such examples of people in Sierra Leone who are either wanted criminals in other parts of the world, or who just are not well-meaning people living amongst us who got entry into the country.
Fabian, it's a good question, but I may not readily have the answer because I don't know how the person in question got into Sierra Leone, which document they used to get to Sierra Leone. These things happen. We see people in different countries of the world, they travel on different passports. People are found in different countries, not countries of their origin. So I wouldn't say, because I don't know how it got into the country, but I will rest assured. I think it also concerns me, especially with the visa on arrival thing. It's an online application, and because something is online, it's not too interactive, it's not too psychological. Like if I sit in front of you, I'm interviewing you for a visa process. By your mannerism, I will tell that you don't deserve, or you deserve the visa, like they do in the embassy of the United States and all the other embassies in the world. And I think these are some of the challenges that come with the internet of doing things. You know, that it takes away the human ability of discerning abnormality in persons. So I would say these are some of the challenges, but I think we all learn from this, and we have to take these lessons learned and implement them in protecting our borders, and also protecting the people of our country and the image of our country.
We have very porous entry points in Sierra Leone. It's not a country where it's just at the airport. We have border crossing points that are poorly manned. We also have, we've had a situation when there was a Nigerian who was wanted in Nigeria, I think, for a murder, and they found him at a nightclub in Sierra Leone.
You wouldn't know.
So with all these problems we have seen, what could be a solution for Sierra Leone going forward? What do we need to do to adjust and perhaps advance and improve like some other countries have done, in terms of whether it's somebody who does not require a visa to get to Sierra Leone or someone that requires a visa, but properly manning to make sure that the right people get to Sierra Leone?
You made mention of the Nigerian. A Nigerian can actually travel to Sierra Leone on just an identity card, an ECOWAS identity card. So if someone is tried by a Nigerian court for murder and they find their way into Sierra Leone using a valid document, until it breaks out that this man is a convict, is a felon, we will not know. But it is our responsibility as a state to respond when those demands of extradition are made, where there are established relations, treaties of extradition. So we will make every effort, but these things happen. Even in the United States, somebody can flee from one country and go to the United States, whereas they are wanted for crimes in that country. It's possible.
Yeah, but every time you encounter a problem, you come up with solutions to address that problem.
That's correct.
That's also part of development.
That's correct.
We learn as we go. That's how
correct.
we grow.
That's correct.
So with the lessons learned recently, what can we do going forward to ensure that we do not repeat some of these mistakes? Now,
we have to strengthen our port of entry to ensure that they are not compromised. Immigration officers must really wake up to the task. They must be vigilant. They must not compromise. They have to go through our embassies, the issuance of visa. They should do deeper due diligence to ensure that these people that are coming are of no criminal records in their country of origin. We also must ensure that we keep the integrity of our passport, and we speak to our folks out there not to overstay and misuse the consular privileges that are given to our citizens that are going to these countries. When we all do this, we protect the image of our country, and we get ourselves from this suspension zone that is inglorious, that is not pleasant for me, that is a stain on the very many good things that we're doing in international stage.
So, Minister, we're rounding off. What assurances would you give to the general public? I mean, the football enthusiasts who would want to watch the World Cup. There are students who would wish to study in the U.S. What assurances would you give to them?
We will continue to work with the embassy and with the State Department to ensure that we find a way to remedy those aspects that can be remedied by the government.
Okay.
The overstaying rates can actually be taken care of by the U.S. Embassy's consular section, because they must also do proper due diligence to know the character of those they issue these visas to. The wicked ones are The righteous ones are suffering because of the conduct and act of the wicked ones. So let's all talk to our folks. Don't misuse these privileges. Let's be a compliant let's be a compliant country so that we don't fall in these inglorious categorizations.
When you said the kinds of people they give these visas to, the ambassador was talking just now about, trying to merge people's vital data into their website. Or,
Progress.
Yes.
Progress.
Criminal records and all these things.
That's
so
correct.
That you get to know who you're giving these visas.
That's correct. And I think learning from this, we will all tighten our spaces, ensure that we innovate to prevent, fraudsters taking advantage of porous systems.
Right.
Thank you very much for making time to be part
Thank
of
you, madam.
the program this morning. We would obviously, these are conversations that continue, especially with the U.S. Situation now. But thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.